Welcome to this week's edition of Inter-University Debate, which is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. I'm your moderator for this debate. My name is Lake Gender Fancy. Now, in this week's edition, we are hosting students of Ndejje University. Ndejje University students, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so this week we are discussing oil prospects. To what extent will the oil revenue address the socio-economic challenges in Uganda? Now, search for oil in Uganda started way back in the 1920s, to the commercial discovery in 2006, to the signing of the final investment decision in 2022. And now, there are several issues that have come up as Uganda continues in its search for oil in the Albertine Graben region. Now, the issues include the land matters, wildlife, human rights, environmental, compensation, all those issues we are going to discuss in the talk show today, including the decision of the EU Parliament where they decided to hold the operation of Total in Uganda. Now, that decision by the EU Parliament was received by several reactions from Uganda, including the President of the Republic of Uganda, demonstrations on street by students. So we will delve into all those issues. Before we start the discussion, let me introduce the panelists for today. I'll start with the first panelist on my extreme left, and that is Ms. Amanya Lynn. Lynn is pursuing Bachelor of Procurement and Logistics Management at Ndejje University. Lynn, you're welcome to the Inter-University Debate.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our second panelist for today is Mr. Akampa Newton. Newton is pursuing Bachelor of Science in Accounting and Finance. He is the former Guild Speaker at Ndejje University, and he's the current Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Earlier, I was telling him he doesn't want to leave the Guild. From Speaker, he's now the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. He's also the Vice Chairperson, NRM, in Ndejje University, and he is the coordinator of MK Project, Ndejje University. Newton, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, what a profile. So we have our third panelist who is seated right next to me. That is Ms. Namugaya Halimah Ngobi. Halimah is pursuing Bachelor of Civil Engineering. She's the Vice President Debate Club and the former Minister for Information and Publicity. Halimah, you're welcome to the Inter-University Debate.
Thank you very much. I'm very much humbled to be here and looking forward to having a great discussion.
Okay, we are happy to have you for this inter-university debate. So as I earlier introduced, we are talking about the oil prospects and how the oil revenue is going to solve socio-economic problems in Uganda. So let us kickstart the discussion, and I'll start with you, Lynn. So Lynn, we know the oil sector in Uganda and the search for oil started way back. So please take us through the historical background of the oil sector in Uganda.
Thank you very much. I'll start by giving a brief background from 1925 to 2006, where oil was commercially discovered in Uganda. Yeah. When you speak about oil in Uganda, we have to go way back to 1925, where Wayland actually documented the existence of oil in Uganda on the shores of Lake Albert and DRC. On the shores of Lake Albert in both Uganda and DRC. So that shows there was existence of oil in both Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. After this existence was put out, we see investigations being carried out, like wells were drilled to get structural information that will be used in surface draining of this oil. So after these investigations were going on, we had a slight interruption by World War II. When World War II occurred, because we were under colonialism, the Uganda was zoned as an agriculture country. So that interrupted this whole oil aspect. There was an interruption. They seized everything they were doing for that time, and Uganda focused more on agriculture. But in 1983, oil was back on track. Efforts were made, like the Petroleum Act of 1985 was put in place. When you look at this act, it was mainly put there to protect Uganda as a country. Yeah, since oil is a very valuable asset. So Uganda could be a target, like for people who want to exploit this and then maybe leave out Uganda. So when you look at this act, it restricted any activity on oil that wasn't licensed. And the license procedure was also indicated in the act. So everything was supposed to operate by this act. Yeah, and then when we go further, we see a year later, we see special training in Uganda, like backgrounds were carried out, like in comparison to some countries that actually were already drilling oil. So these trainings actually equipped people with a knowledge of oil. What is this whole oil aspect about? How can we benefit? Like, what are the requirements to actually drill this oil? All that was set apart in a year after 1986. So after this training was put in place, then since this oil was discovered in both Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, in 1990, we see signing of a contract between Uganda and Congo to actually like explore together on the common grounds they had of the oil. Then after that, in 1993, regulations were put in place. This is when the regulations were actually enforced, some of the regulations that were actually drafted in the act. Yeah. And then after that, we see licensing of exploration in Semiliki Basin. This was carried out to the Heritage Oil and the Gas Limited. Furthermore, in 1998, we see other basins also being explored, like the Hadman Resource Energy was licensed to explore Area 2, that was the northern side of the Lake Albert. And then we go further to see like between 2002 and 2004, drilling of the Turkana well started. And then we go to the most important history, that was 2006, where actually Uganda was discovered with commercial valuable oil deposits. Yeah, that's my brief background on oil in Uganda.
Okay, thank you so much, Lynn, for taking us down history. So we can now tell that the oil discovery in Uganda started way, way back. The search for oil has taken such a long time. So let me bring Newton into the discussion. So Newton, looking at the history, Lynn stopped in 2006. Now my question to you is, what is the current status quo of the oil sector in Uganda?
Well, thank you once again for having me on this show. The current status quo of Uganda's oil, I think after that brief history, several agreements were put in place to make sure that Uganda's oil was extracted. And we saw the last agreement being signed by His Excellency, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, and the President of the Republic of Tanzania, Her Excellency, Samia Hassan. And we also had engagements with different companies that would go ahead and extract our oil. We have Total Energies that has a shareholding of 62%. Then having signed the partnership with Tanzania, the Tanzania Corporation, Tanzania Development Corporation has 15%. Then Uganda National Petroleum Company has 15%. Then Sinok has 8%. So we are good to go as far as the exploitation or extraction of our Uganda soil is concerned. Though we have the ups and downs, like the recent recent UN discussion about
The EU.
Yeah, the EU about the concerns of the human rights as far as the oil extraction is concerned. But then, nevertheless, we are good to go as far as Uganda is concerned. And we believe by April 2025, we shall be commercially drilling oil from the western part of Uganda.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Newton, for that. Let me move to Halimah. So, Halimah, how prepared is Uganda legally when it comes to its legal framework for this oil and for the oil sector?
Okay, thank you very much. It is always a beautiful thing talking about things concerning the country, because I am a very, very, very patriotic Ugandan. So when we speak about something like oil, then I am supposed to speak about the legal framework, which we understand, of course, the laws are there to protect the people and everything. Yeah, it is really an honor. So just like anything that always comes to place, for something to be orderly, for something to actually see progress, for us to actually see, okay, for something to be result-oriented, we believe organization is always key. And when we speak about organization, that is when we actually bring in the laws. Laws are put there to help guide people on what to do. So speaking about oil, just like Lynn had already told us, that after the commercial release or the commercial discovery of the oil in 2006, we see in 2008 the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development issuing a publication. It was an announcement about the National Oil and Gas Policy. Now, this policy was involving very many aspects, or rather, it was catering for all corners to do with the oil. You see, oil is something very big. When we speak about oil, you will not speak about the environment, the wildlife, the water, and everything. So that combined, they came up with a policy that was published by the ministry. In this policy, we see different acts coming about. We see the Environment Act, specifically Chapter 153. They give us the guidelines on how the oil is going to be extracted, how it is not supposed to actually affect the people and the environment, and in the event that it does, how we are supposed to mitigate these negative impacts. Then we also see the Income Tax Act. That also comes around because at the end of the day, we are discovering the oil because we are expecting revenue out of it. So how it's going to be managed is what the Act talks about. Then we also see about the Land Act. Land Act comes in to explain how, because the Land Act actually speaks about two phases. The first phase is one that was actually carried out prior to 2021, where there was evaluation of the land and how people had actually settled around this Albertine region. Then the second phase is how the compensation is going to be actually done for these people, because somehow these people had to be relocated. That is about the Land Act. Then the other act that was in the policy, or is in the policy, is the Water Act, then the Wildlife Act. All those because the water bodies in and of themselves have wildlife. Yeah, so that we have to protect them because we love the oil, but even we also need the wildlife because it caters for tourism. Yeah. Then away from that, we see still in the legal framework, we see different institutions that have been put up to help still in the guidance. We see the National Petroleum Authority. Then we also see the National Environment Strategy Agency that comes about. All these have been put in place to help in the proper operation of the oil thing. I will not mention about, of course, the existing laws and let's say the Penal Code Act that will cater for any violations and everything. Yeah, so legally, I feel like we have played a very good part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Halimah, for that in-depth discussion of the legal framework. And I think there is also UNOC that has been put in place. Yeah. So let me move to Lynn. So Halimah gave us a legal framework, how Uganda is prepared legally for the oil prospects. My question to you is, how about in other aspects? How do you rate Uganda's preparedness in the oil sector as we continue with the prospects in the Albertine Graben?
Well, even in other aspects except the legal one, I feel like Uganda has really gone the extra mile to do all the necessary to make sure that this oil drilling process is very beneficial to the country. Like when you see the investigations that were carried out, when you see the procedures the country has actually like put in place to prepare the country for this oil transition, because in 2025, Uganda is expected to be a oil producing country, right? So I feel like Uganda is very well prepared. How? When you look at the people who have been affected, it has put in place, okay, like these people who are going to be affected have been compensated, or are going to be those who have not yet been compensated, are actually, their lands have been valued. And just that we have a little retardation due to COVID really pulled us a little bit back, so some funds are reallocated. But other than that, it's still planning to actually compensate these people. Yes, still she has talked about that in a legal aspect, but if you even look at it in the livelihood of these people, I feel like that way we are really prepared, because it has catered for the livelihood of people, and these people have been reallocated. They've actually been given better places, so they're already benefiting from the oil factor. And when you look at the other investments the country has gone ahead to make, this drilling process, this whole investigation process, people are going to be the ones doing this, or people have been the ones doing this. So what has the government done? They've set up hospitals, they've set up health centers, schools for these people. As they're actually doing these things, they're actually accessing the other services.
So have some information about the same. So Uganda as a country is prepared very well as far as this extraction is concerned. We've seen it prepare itself in a way that it has developed the infrastructure, the roads. We've seen an airfield constructed in Kabale, that's in Hoima, the western part of Uganda. So all these infrastructure is a way of preparing as a country for the exploration part. Roads have been built, she has said, schools have been built, hospitals, provide the social services to whatever category of people that might be in that area. If it is the workers that are working, they have a place, they have hospitals where they can get medical care from. As far as transport is concerned, we've seen nice roads being constructed. An airfield is there. It can ease the travel or the movement of the workers or whichever category of people from their part from Hoima to Tanzania, or from Hoima to Entebbe. So Uganda is so far well prepared as far as the extraction of the oil is concerned.
And also, Adonati has said, when you look at the other areas like the wildlife, actually they mapped out areas that would be critically affected by this drilling, and they said those wildlife centers, they were cut out. So government is making sure it doesn't leave very big footprints of the drillings that will affect the tourism. So if you see its preparedness, it has made sure other sectors also benefit from this oil drilling and don't suffer the losses as oil is going up. Let me say, for example, we have maybe wildlife decreasing, no? So as a country, we are very prepared in every aspect.
Okay, so Lynn, I have a question for you there.
Yes.
As you talk about Uganda being prepared infrastructure-wise, we have seen demonstrations on street over land compensation, and we have seen all over the media that issue. So how could you address the issue of land compensation? What is its status quo?
Well, when we look at land compensation, we go back to, now let's look at the history of Ugandans and how they react to maybe development projects, yes? There are some people who are inhabiting these places that are necessary for this oil drilling. And when they look at this, they know, since this place is necessary, the value of my place now has increased, because without my place, actually this project won't be successful 100%. So some people, because of lack of patriotism, take it personally and be like, I have to benefit in every way I can out of this. So instead of looking at the progress we're going to make as a country, they start getting selfish and they're like, for me, my land, I feel like it's supposed to be valued like this, because the country went ahead to get people to value this land, and everyone was compensated. And for those who have not yet been compensated, actually, they have not yet been evicted. It has been put out, no one has been evicted or shifted from their land. And furthermore, these people, let me say, farmers, the ones that actually had their produce, they've been allowed to harvest their thing. So when you look at this, we have to also recognize the nature of Ugandans. The fact that they really get selfish sometimes. Just people are out there demonstrating, but is their cause justifiable? Because compensation has actually been made. Because as a country, the reason why we're drilling this is to improve the standards of living of people. So there is no way you can say that the government that is actually trying to find a way of improving the lives of people is actually like failing to compensate them and taking them behind.
Okay, let me bring Halimah into the discussion. So, Lynn, if I'm correctly quoting her, says the issue of compensation, government is compensating, land is being valued. The issue are people who are being selfish, right? So we have seen these demonstrations, people claiming we have not been compensated. And we know very clearly that even the Constitution itself says for government to compulsorily acquire land, government has to give compensation. So what is your perspective on the issues of compensation of the people who are being displaced, especially by IACO project?
Okay, one thing we should all agree is that there is no smoke without fire. In the event that these people are actually demonstrating, it's because something has actually triggered their demonstration. I do not think if these people were actually compensated, as my friend is actually putting it up, they'd actually be out there demonstrating. And the argument of people are being selfish,
Greed,
and being greedy, as she has said, I don't think is something that should actually hold water. Why? By default, the fact that my place actually is where the oil is going to pass, that makes it valuable. So if in any case, let's say you're going to use my land to get, say, 1 million, and you're giving me 2,000, practically it does not add up. But okay, we are not going to argue, like we are not going to have an argument of whether people are being patriotic or not patriotic. The argument is if the government is actually displacing these people, regardless of what is actually happening. Because one thing I understand is every time they're actually making our budget, they always cater. There is that percentage that is always given for the disaster preparedness. So maybe in the case that we had COVID and maybe it amounted to the money that even exists, like maybe exceeded maybe the money that was allocated for disaster preparedness. As the government, they are not supposed to shift their burden, or they're not supposed to shift their incompetence, lack of a better word, to the people to say, you see, right now we do not have what to do. We do not have to do because there is no money. I feel like as the government, they have to do something for these people, honestly, because there is no way you can say these people are being greedy. Because one, if you people were not displacing them, they would not have any problem with you. But in the event that it is for a good cause, can they at least do something for these people? Because one thing I'm certain is that these people demonstrated because they were not compensated. That we have to agree. So matters of why they were actually demonstrating greed and being selfish, those do not count, because had they to be compensated, they would have not demonstrated. That is, I think is not up for discussion.
I think I want to add something on that. I believe you've said there is no smoke without fire, yes. But you can't ignore the fact that we as a country are actually going to benefit from this oil. So compensation being the short-term effect of this oil drilling, they would go with whatever has been valued because there is a standard valuing system. Because at the end of that day, when this oil is drilled, these same people, as much as they've been displaced, they are also going to benefit. So going out and protesting in bad faith, despite the fact, yes, the government has a responsibility to the people, but I don't think it's one-sided. I feel like we also have a responsibility to our government, yes? So at the end of the day, if we don't have the country's best interests at heart, and yes, it is my land and they're drilling, it has become more valuable, that is just now retarding us. That is the reason why our development is not so high. If we had people who look at the bigger picture, unless if you're telling me drilling oil is useless, and I don't think you can make that argument.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Let's let us bring Newton into that discussion. So Newton, on one hand, there is an issue that is being brought up by Lynn. Let us think about patriotism. Please take the money that the government is giving you.
Yeah, sure.
On the other hand, we have, these people who own their land and they have been on this land. And we know that for government to compulsorily acquire land, there has to be compensation that matches the value of the land. How do you think the government should best solve this issue of land compensation?
Thank you very much. Like you earlier introduced, personally, I'm a supporter of the government, NRM. So
am I asking this question to the
right?
No. I'm trying to build my point. So among the pillars of NRM, we have patriotism. Yes, I wouldn't want to say that these people shouldn't be compensated. I'm sure there is a certain value that has been attached to them. Though, as a Ugandan, I have to be patriotic. I have the love of my country. Yes, oil has been discovered, say, in my region, and I know, and I also want to correct, they haven't been displaced, they have just been relocated. And I'm sure those that you've seen being relocated have always been put in good areas. At least they are living a better way of life compared to the previous kind of life they have been living. We've seen houses being constructed for them. And by the way, the people on the streets who are demonstrating, we find they're living in funny structures, and we see the government putting in place modern structures.
Newton, let me just ask you right there.
Yes, please.
What is the percentage of the people who have been given houses and relocated compared to the people who are being affected?
The bigger percentage of the people who have been affected have been relocated and structures or houses have been given to them. We have a small number that hasn't yet been compensated, but like earlier stated by my colleague Lynn, these are people who are still trying to, maybe who haven't taken the package that the government has provided to them. But then, if a house is given to me, if a piece of land has been given to you and a certain amount of money, we should stop exaggerating figures. We know Ugandans have always behaved like that. You want to exaggerate a certain figure just because a project has to, they have to seek your guidance or your acceptance in order to use your land. But then I'm sure they haven't been compensated solo. I'm sure they must have been given an average figure. And I believe if you have that average figure, plus the spirit of the Ugandan patriotism, you're good to go. At the end of the day, we know revenue is going to be gotten from this oil extraction, and then services will be brought back. And I'm sure those people are going to better off gain from this than maybe people from Gulu or from the Central.
Okay, let me on that issue of land compensation, let me lastly ask this question to Halimah. So Halimah, how best should the government handle this issue? Because there is one hand, the issue of oil extraction that has a timeline that the government has got to do this project. Then on the other hand, we have the citizens who say, you know what, you are not passing here. Unless there's adequate compensation to the tune to the tune of the value of the land that I feel should be compensated. How best should a balance be struck in this case?
Personally, or maybe before I actually answer your question, I want to react to what Newton was actually saying. Newton he actually said it very well. The bigger percentage has been compensated. Then I'm asking myself, what has happened to the other percentage? Because by default, that smaller percentage that has not been compensated is the one that is actually out there and is crying out to the government.
They're on the round table
let's have Halimah finish her point.
Yeah, I did quote that from his speech. You said the bigger percentage has been compensated. Now that only leaves the smaller percentage not compensated. And that is why these people are actually coming out. And realistically, I do not think someone who has been given good compensation, say has been given a house, has been given like to start anew, will actually go out to the street and start complaining. The people that are not complaining are people that are comfortable with what they have been given, and they feel that is sufficient or it is equal value to their property. Then those who are not satisfied, or those who have actually not been given anything, are the people out there demonstrating. And when someone feels it is a right for someone to actually feel like this does not tantamount to what I actually gave you guys. You understand? So I don't think you should take it to that person, be like, you're not being patriotic and all that. What I think the government should actually do, because at the end of the day, we need the oil. They need the land. Okay, like we need the land because we need the oil. These people have to be relocated. But we are doing this for the betterment of Ugandans. So we are not going to make Ugandans suffer, or we are not going to treat them, or we are not going to treat them in a way that is not respectable, all in the names of we have to proceed with the project. Because at the end of the day, it is these people that are supposed to benefit from this oil. So what I think the government should do should have done from way back is, one, to actually, okay, one thing I understand is that human beings are not stupid people. These are people that I feel you can talk to. People are in Uganda because they love the country, because we are Uganda. We are Uganda. The things that are actually done to us as Ugandans are things that actually make us think otherwise. Or maybe say we are not patriotic and all that. But everyone loves their country, not until something is actually done to them that will make them think otherwise. Okay. So I think what the government has to do is not to actually just ignore the fact that these people are demonstrating, and they have to sit down these people. I feel like I always believe there is a best way to, besides violence, these people can be spoken to. I feel like these people can be spoken to, and I feel like because I feel like the government right now may have gotten the hit. The oil is coming, so maybe they're getting most of the money and they're investing it in the oil, which is not a bad thing. They just have to make sure all levels are moving at the same pace. Let the investment be there, but let also these people have their part of let them have their part of the cake, their share of the cake. Let them be compensated, that way we can move smoothly. But for as long as we are going to keep pressing for the project, I mean for the operations of the oil, while these people are not being compensated, these people are going to keep rioting and demonstrating, and at the end of the day, instability is what is going to come up instead of a peaceful and beautiful nation.
Okay, I see Newton has something to add.
Yes, sure. I beg to disagree with Halimah. She says people should be given the equal value of what they have. And I believe these people have not been given the equal value of the initial property. They must have been given something a little bit high. But then once people come to demonstrate, there are few people that haven't been compensated. Are these people that haven't yet maybe agreed to the package that has been given to them? Maybe there is a certain worth they want. But once they force the government to make sure they are given what they want, then they won't hold the government accountable. This is an investment of the country that few years from now, starting from 2025, 2026, that we hope to get some revenue. And these are the same people that we claim to be given a bigger share of the oil money just because the oil was gotten from their region. And there are people that are still demanding to be given something a little bit high. If they are given that what they want, that means they might not hold the government accountable because they will be satisfied with what they already have. So in order to hold the government accountable, let them kindly take what the government has given them. I'm sure it was valid and they feel it is worthy what they are giving in return.
Okay, we have to move on from the land matters. Okay, you can conclude on that issue, then we move to human rights.
I just felt it's important for the purpose of learning to put it out there that there is no one who has been reallocated. There's no one who has been reallocated without compensation. All those who have not been compensated still have actual ownership to their land. So going out to the street to demonstrate further shows the greed. Because, I mean, if you are complaining that you have not got what you want, at least complain on the front that I've been displaced. But there is no evidence of anyone who can come through and say, I have been displaced, but I've not compensated. Because they were required to sign agreements. So all those who have been reallocated actually gave their consent because they signed. There is a bureaucracy. Most people be like, Uganda is so bureaucratic. But this is where now it pays off. There is actually evidence. These people have signed agreements. So unless you can actually prove that there are people who have been displaced without compensation, I think we have just been rotating around circles over a fact that we know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to human rights issues. And I'll start with you, Halimah. So we have seen as well issues of human rights that have come up from the oil and gas issue in Uganda. And it's one of the reasons why the EU decided to hold operations of Total. So what are some of the human rights issues that have come up from the oil sector?
Okay. When we speak of human rights, one important right that is actually associated with the oil is a right to a health and safe environment. When we look at the whole process of the oil and everything, the whole operation, you realize that, one, there is no way, or we actually have not had technology that is going to do the extraction of the oil without destroying the environment. In the environment, we mean we are going to have issues of, let's say, air pollution, we are going to have issues of water pollution, and as per the status quo, we have not had any measures that have been put in place to actually show that maybe this is how like maybe the air pollution is going to be mitigated, or this is how the negative impacts of damaging the environment are going to be mitigated and all that. So in the long run, what do we see? When we have a lot of air pollution and maybe water pollution, we are going to see people being affected health-wise. People are going to get very many diseases. And these are issues that have not actually been tackled. Like these issues that have not been tackled. Like most of the acts that have been put around and the laws are concentrating on the environment, but even the implementation itself has been very low. And given the history of our country, which is of course very open, you cannot guarantee that even the acts and the laws that are put in place are going to be implemented. I mean, there is no guarantee for that. So I feel like on matters of, let's say, the environment that are actually going to affect the health of the people and everything, those rights really have not been, like upheld very well. Yeah, then the other issue is maybe right to actually information. I feel like that is a right for every Ugandan. But when you go back to the laws that are actually in place, when you look at the law of information, the procedure for specifically oil stipulates that the state, the people that have access to information shall be stakeholders of, let's say, the Attorney General and let's say the Parliament, of which the Parliament in and itself will not have a conclusive approval for any of those laws or anything that those bills that are going to be signed in. So that the fact, okay, maybe if the Parliament itself had the responsibility and had the authority to do that, we would say the fact that people are actually the ones who vote parliamentarians into power, somehow we have that right, so these people can get back to us. But the fact that these people also do not have the right to actually give the final decisions on oil, that in and of itself makes it a bit shady, and I feel like that right is also kind of violated. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Halimah. Let me move to Newton. So Newton, we are still talking about the human rights issues that have been highlighted by the EU when they decided to, you know what, Total, you need to halt your operation in Uganda. So they cited human rights issues. But some of the issues have come up from Halimah, but also on social media we have seen issues that people are being arrested, people are being detained, people are disappearing, you know, and people are being beaten, and then several other human rights issues that have been cited. So what is your perspective on the human rights issues that have come up from the oil sector?
Thank you very much. I think the issue of human rights is just being exaggerated by the EU. Yes, I wouldn't want to take it for granted that there are not those small scenarios where the human rights have been affected negatively. Yes, it is so minimal. But then concerning the oil extraction, the human rights, I think they will kind of be improved. One, if, yes, the people in that region have the right to education, and we've seen more schools being constructed as a result of improving their social services there, since they have this oil that we want. We've also seen more health facilities being put in place. Those people in that region can be able to benefit from them. And there's concerning the pollution of the environment, it's going to be minimal, since the bigger facilities that are going to be used in the extraction have been buried underground. Yes, there are those that are above the surface, but then they're minimal. So I don't see much pollution, since we are also encouraging the people, since the government is encouraging the people in the area to plant more trees to help us, to help in the trapping of that pollution from the extraction. So I don't see a big gap as far as the human rights are going to be affected by the oil extraction negatively. It's going to be minimal, and I'm sure the government has put in place different bodies to make sure that they're handled with care.
What are those bodies? What has the government put in place?
Like I earlier said, we've always had bodies to do with environment. We have NEMA. So what has NEMA done? Encouraged the people to plant more trees. It has also participated in planting of more trees to curb the air pollution. Concerning the way of living of people, their standards of living are going to improve. Like I earlier said, infrastructure has been put in place. Better roads have been given to them. That means people who are there, who are farmers, can be able to transport their commodities to the markets. Hospitals have been put in place to provide the social services. Schools have been put in place. Those that have been existing have been equipped them more. Make sure they provide education to the people. So all those are the privileges, all those are the rights the people in that area are going to enjoy with the extraction of the oil.
Okay, I see Halimah has something to add.
Okay, Newton is okay. I love the fact that you're actually telling us about the things that are going to come, which would be a very beautiful thing. which would be a very beautiful thing because they're going to come in the future. Now, what we are talking about in the present is something that is actually happening right now. I don't know if you understand that the oil is for us Ugandans.
Yes.
It is, but the fact that the process that is leading us to the benefits that you're talking about is being cruel is our issue right now. You cannot tell us that people are going to be out there and start, because forgive people who actually are ignorant about the oil. Because I mean, it is at the end of the day, it is the role of the government to actually inform these people or get them educated about the importance of oil and everything.
But we are going to take a short break. Sorry
Okay.
to cut you short. You're going to take a short break and we'll come back with still students of Ndejje University discussing the oil prospects in Uganda.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive socio-economic and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that short break. We are still with students of Ndejje University and we are discussing oil prospects and how the oil revenue will solve the socio-economic problems in Uganda. Before we took a short break, we were with you, Halimah, and you were providing a rebuttal to something that came up from Newton. So you can proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. Earlier on, Newton had told us how we are going to get very many good things from the oil, which is a very beautiful thing. What we did not actually acknowledge, or what he did not acknowledge, is what is actually happening in the present. It is okay, we are going to have the good things. The process is what we are actually concerned about. The violation of rights, the brutal beatings of people and all that is, and the fact that we have not addressed this currently is our problem right now. The point is, if this actually continues, the results may not actually be very good. And at the end of the day, people, instead of people taking the oil production as a blessing, it may end up being a curse. Because at the end of the day, if we are having people who are out there, once people are actually out there protesting and they are being brutally beaten, they are being arrested, they are violating them of their right to movement, right to expression, free expression. And I feel like if those things are not actually addressed, then people are not going to embrace oil exploration as a very beautiful thing, which actually should be the primary goal of the government to do. The government should portray and educate people about the importance of oil, what benefits we're actually going to get from this oil, and how best we can deal with the situation other than using the violent means. Something that I think Newton actually tried to dodge around, because you spoke about environment and you actually ignored the fact that there are a few violations, but understand that we
call them small.
Very small. I do not know what he meant by very small, because at the end of the day, if my leg is broken, you may call it small, but to me it may be something big because I will not work for the rest of my life. So I do not know what you meant by very small. If the beating is small, I don't know if it was kind of class that they have to punish them like that, or you felt like that is the best way people can understand the situation, which I actually think is wrong. I feel like there are always better means to do something other than the violent way.
Okay, let me bring Lynn into that discussion. So, Lynn, we are talking about human rights issues. When it came out from the EU Parliament that when they addressed Total to halt the operation in Uganda, the president of Uganda actually reacted, if you remember. But his reaction was not based on solving the human rights issues, but telling the EU basically the Uganda solution if Total decides to back out. So, how are the human rights issues being handled that have been raised?
Well, I think the important question is the fact something Halimah is actually not addressing is with rights comes responsibility, right? But most people, when they're talking about human rights, they don't talk about the responsibility part. They actually completely ignore it. Let me give you a small picture. Just very few years back, we had COVID, and the government put in place SOPs. These were actually to protect the lives of Ugandans. The same Ugandans were still not observing the social distancing. They were still going for parties in crowded places, yet they know we are in a pandemic, to the point that the government was forced to hire people to actually beat these people to get off the streets, yeah? So when you come and then you say we are violating people's rights, come back to that question. Are these people whose rights you feel like being violated, are they fulfilling their responsibility? So yes, maybe you say there's actually maybe people are not being allowed to move freely. If they actually issue out and they're like, maybe movements have been maybe like minimal, why don't you adapt to what they are suggesting? If you feel like maybe it's not right, there's a criteria for complaining.
Let me just ask you this straightforward question, Lynn.
Yes.
It's not even a maybe situation anymore. Yes. There are issues of people demonstrating over their land being taken, yes, and then they get beaten.
Yes.
Then we have issues of people being kidnapped.
Yes.
Let me use that term. Yes. People disappearing, yes, and then several other human rights issues. So it's not like there is an assumption. Yes. So in that scenario where there is a real situation that is coming up out of the oil sector, how is the government handling it?
Yes. I want to trace back to demonstrations. It's their right to have peaceful demonstrations, yes? But in most cases, when these people are demonstrating, they actually cause distraction. Yes, they interrupt the workflow. So now they are overlapping their rights. They are allowed to peacefully demonstrate. Yes, demonstrate that your land is being taken, but don't interrupt the normal process. This is where the government actually comes in, where police has to stop these demonstrations, because some people don't actually know how to demonstrate without causing chaos. Some people actually turn out to burn tires, and this is causing chaos. Yes, they actually are not focusing on we are demonstrating, is our voice being heard. Now, on the case of disappearing, there's actually, okay, there's not been any detailed evidence coming out to show that this so and so has been kidnapped, or maybe we have it on record, we have it on video showing that it was a government operative. Yes, maybe these people are disappearing, but we also have heard of political espionage. Someone else can do it. An opposition can actually kidnap someone so that the government maybe looks bad. Yes, no, don't wonder, things actually happen, and if you're not
is that what is happening in the oil sector? I don't want us to speculate.
Yes.
Or is that what is happening in the oil sector? Were there burning of tires? Were there violent demonstrations?
Yes, there are. There were violent demonstrations by the time the police got involved. Yes, maybe they are not supposed to handle this violence. I don't support violence, but we also have to look at how are we solving, what's the real problem, the nature of their demonstration. So maybe if people adopt to peaceful demonstrations, then we'll have very limited police intervention, because yes, it is their right to demonstrate.
May I
okay, yes. Let's have Halimah and then we move to Newton.
Okay, first I want to appreciate the fact that you have said maybe these people, okay, it's not a maybe case because it's actually happening right now. People are demonstrating because of their land and everything. Now, when you say we are looking for a solution, we are not supposed to tell them to please demonstrate peacefully. What we are supposed to look, what the government is supposed to do is look for the reason as to why they are demonstrating. The root cause is what they are supposed to tackle. So now, in the event that you you're not here to organize the demonstrations. I don't think that can be a solution in any way.
Let's leave Halimah.
The solution is not to
have your back.
Like, the solution is not to move from violent to peaceful, because demonstrating is not the best. Okay, demonstrating in and of itself is not the best reaction that the government must get. But what the government has to do is look for the reason as to why people are demonstrating. Once they tackle the problem as to why people are demonstrating, and which you have already clearly said it's because of the land issues and everything, you yourself, I think there will not be any demonstration, peaceful or violent. Demonstrations will not be there.
Yes,
okay.
But in our first half, we addressed the land issue. So we actually felt like some of these demonstrations are unjustified. So saying we tackle a problem that is actually unjustified, people demonstrating without right cause, and you want the government to tackle that problem, is the government going to be at disposal to entertain any kind of drama? Because, got me right, I'm not saying that demonstrating is actually not right, or maybe all times there have been demonstrations that have been at zero cost. But are you saying that government should be there to entertain any kind of drama? What if people wake up and demonstrate somewhere else about something else? The government is already supposed to, it's supposed to analyze the situation, which I believe the government has done. Is the demonstrating justified or unjustified? That's when they are supposed to actually go ahead and solve that problem. So telling a government to solve a problem which we don't think is there, I don't know. That maybe that's more wasting of taxpayers' money. Yes, people are demonstrating for land, but we don't believe that demonstrations are justified. Yes, so that was handled in the first half. And furthermore, I want to say human rights have actually been, because that was the question. My focus should be people's human rights have actually been respected, like Newton said. Hospitals have been built. Yes, and when it comes to the pollution, you said there have actually not been solutions in place to handle the pollution. Let me take you back. We have industrial work, and this has also caused pollution. So there are actually ways to handle pollution, and the government is taking a course to handle pollution. Yes, you have said our water system, but they treat these waste before disposing them in the water. So if you come out and just make an open statement saying the government is doing nothing, then I feel it's either out of ignorance or you just have refused to accept and recognize the part the government is playing.
We have been joined by a fourth panelist, and that is Mr. Byaruhanga Julius, who is pursuing Bachelor of Business Administration at Ndejje University and is a former GRC. Julius, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, we are happy that you joined us at a time when we are discussing issues of human rights that have been cited and linked to the oil sector that is happening right now. It has come up from the people in that area. We have seen it on social media, on the main media, reported on news. We have also seen it being cited by the EU Parliament when they made a decision that Total should halt its operation in Uganda. So my question to you is, what is your perspective of the alleged human rights violations?
Yes, thank you very much. I think human rights is a core value that each and every human being should hold. And I think it's only right for the European to intervene if there are human rights abuses via this project of ECOP. Yes, so the East African crude oil pipeline is a 143-kilometer long pipeline that is between Uganda and Tanzania. We also have Total Energies as a shareholder in this crude oil pipeline. The observation of the human rights for an organization that is serving the purpose of a nation. ECOP is there to enrich the country. We have discovered oil. This commercial discovery was made in 2006. How can the Ugandans benefit from this without abusing their rights? Having France as a shareholder in the ECOP may give a right to the Europeans to suggest basing on their facts, I have not seen. Okay, on my opinion, I don't think human rights are being abused by ECO. If Europeans think or have basis to think that human rights are being abused in Uganda, it's only right for the shareholders to make it right. If a pipeline is passing somewhere on someone's land, those people deserve to be paid, compensated, or some kind of argument can be made between the two, not just evacuating them using their land without their permission. It's only right for them to be discussed with. I have had a scenario is this week where a group of girls went to the Total company in Kampala, and they were protesting. They were protesting, saying that people are being evicted from land due to this, the ECOP project. I don't think that is really true, because none of these girls had a basis to write or protest. I don't know if there are political actors within that action, that event that happened. What I think is ECOP is here to serve Ugandans, to enrich the Ugandans. Main focus is because the article of Uganda 244 vests power in the government of Uganda for all that minerals, that is to say petrol, that is discovered within Uganda. It entrusts that power into the government. The government looks for ways of benefiting the Ugandans. There have been a lot of people have said that the GDP will increase by 20%. That is, they are planning to start to produce oil by 2025 to the local East African market. That is my basic concern, and I don't think human rights are being abused in Uganda, because we have legal measures that are followed, policies that are followed by such a big organ such as ECOP. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Julius. Let me bring Newton into that discussion of human rights. So, Newton, how best do we strike that balance? There is, however much I've had some of the panelists say there are no human rights issues, I've also had panelists who have said there are human rights issues, and you yourself earlier you said there are human rights issues, small human rights issues that are coming up. So how best can the human rights issues be addressed as Ugandans prepare to receive this oil?
Thank you very much. I earlier said they are small. Yes, I don't encourage the abuse of human rights in Uganda, and the president has oftentimes come out strongly. He never supports beating or torturing of Ugandans, because that is the first thing that took him the bush back in the 80s. So I respect human rights, and I believe government can do a little bit more as far as protecting the human rights of Ugandans is concerned. What I can encourage the government to do is, since there are allegations of torture of human rights in Uganda, the government is now being checked. It should revise if it can do more of the sensitization, so that the communities, so that the Ugandans, so that the people in the oil region can get to know the benefits of the oil, after it has been extracted. Government can also check its relevant bodies, say the police or what, whichever people. Yes, there might be allegations, but then to a certain extent they might be true. So it calls responsible bodies, responsible government bodies, to come on board and get to know why these people are on the streets demonstrating. If the allegations are true, then they ought to be handled with care. If they are not true, then we still need feedback as Ugandans. We need to know whether we hope they are not political actors, you know, disguising as fighters for human rights. Okay. That's why I call upon government, through whichever bodies are concerned, to come on board and make sure that they look into it with concern. Okay.
Thank you. Let me get back to Julius. So Julius, let us move into another issue, and that is still connected to this. The EU sitting and saying, Total, you know what? You need to hold your operations in Uganda. Do you think with the oil prospects, we should worry about international interference?
I don't think it's right for European Union to suggest or to say that the ECOP should stop their activities. They are right to advise on how to handle human rights via this project is concerned. But as a third party, the best thing they can do is to watch and advise. That's my take.
Okay, let me bring Lynn into that discussion. So Lynn, Julius says the EU had to watch and advise. Now, in a scenario where Total has a stake in the project in Uganda, do you think the EU had a right to sit and make that decision?
Well, I feel like the European Union had a right to a justifiable extent. Why? Because human rights is a very sensitive topic, yes? And naturally, if anyone, even if it was on an individual basis, you watch people's rights being undermined, you would want to do something. And these external bodies actually have impact to our oil. How, like, some of the contracts have been made with these countries, like Total has its roots in EU. So its intervention is actually protecting its participation in this, because at the end of the day, if the operations of Total are affecting human rights and Total has its roots in EU, this also extends, if EU doesn't do anything, if it doesn't intervene, it means they're advocating for human rights abuse. So I really feel like that foreign intervention is justified at this point, until further notice where we actually see any kind of manipulation or exploitation. But on the question of human rights, its intervention is very justified.
Okay. Newton, your perspective, before I move to Halimah. In a scenario where we are celebrating 60 years of independence, do you think we should be having EU intervention on issues of human rights and environmental matters?
Thank you. Well said. At 60 years of independence, EU should get to know that. Sorry about that. Should get to know that Uganda is no longer a colony to any of them. It is independent. Julius well stated it. They can advise, but they can't stop. That's why you saw the president come out strongly to tell the public, to tell everyone that if at all Total went with the resolution that the EU had said, then we'll get some other contractors. We can, but we know as a country, we've had 60 years of independence. We can best make decisions that can help Ugandans. They shouldn't get to think that they better care about Ugandans more than us, more than the presidents, more than the leaders that we have. Though we can, like I earlier said, we can check and see where have we gone wrong. If there are some human rights abuses, then they can be checked on. But then I don't think they are as heavy as they are being alleged. There are those few individuals that might want to operate over the book, but then we can bring them back to line. But then EU should just advise, like they earlier said, they shouldn't intervene in the matters of our country. Our leaders best care about us than them. who are far.
Okay, let me just ask you this question before I move to Halimah. So in a scenario where citizens don't feel like their rights are being addressed by the government, and then where should they go? And then also in a scenario where an international organization like the EU feel like there are abuses, human rights and environmental abuses happening in Uganda, and yet at the same time their prime company is having a big share in that project, what should they have done?
Yeah.
So those are two questions.
Yes, please. We have human rights abuses to a minimal extent. The same applies to them. We haven't talked about back in the days when you used to see all those posters everywhere, Black Matters, Black Lives Matter. We haven't talked about them. They have their own small hiccups. We also have the same. But then, like I said, we can work on these small human rights abuses. They are not as heavy as they are putting them, unless they have their own selfish interests. And the president has oftentimes talked about them. We know they have their own hidden agendas, but then they are trying to ride on these human rights. Yes, if they are there, they can be handled. They can be handled. This is not something big that a country or our leaders can't fail to handle. We can handle. It's just a matter of time. Let's just give it time. I know in a period of a month or less, it will be no matter. It will be best handled.
Okay.
I beg to interject.
Yes, please do. You see, we have two scenarios here we are looking at. An EU with a stake, given Total has a stake in the country. On the other hand, we have Uganda celebrating 60 years of independence. How do we strike a balance here?
We go back to what has Uganda achieved in these 60 years of independence? If it's just a cliche and the government keeps fronting independence, yet there are people actually suffering. A good example would be CNN released a video during the previous elections where people were brutally beaten to death, where there was very high police brutality. So unlike what Newton says, should we wait up to that point where people were just killed in the streets to actually say that we need to intervene? And he said the government of Uganda loves its people so much, so it doesn't believe that EU has Uganda's best interest more than the government. But this was the government brutalizing its people over politics. So by the time the government can do that, we have to keep a keen eye. That's why I believe at this point, if it's a question of human rights, it is justified. And when we come back to the point that EU actually is a stakeholder, Total is a stakeholder, that gives it the platform, a more justified platform. You are a stakeholder. What does that mean? You can make decisions, unless if for you stakeholding looks like something different. But I personally believe the fact that they are stakeholders gives them the right to actually participate in decision making. So I would just advise the government to actually investigate, and if they feel like they are not abusing human rights, that's very provable, yeah? So they would just prove that, investigate that, and we would move on. But when that question is still hanging in balance, the EU has every right to participate.
Okay, let's move to Halimah. So, Halimah, what is your perspective of all this? On one hand, Uganda is celebrating 60 years of independence. On the other hand, there is EU that feels they have a stake given Total having a stake in this country. Now, looking back at considering what is happening internationally, we have seen Russia, Ukraine. Do you think the EU had a right here to intervene, and to what extent?
Okay, thank you very much. First, I want to commend my friend Lynn for one step to change is acceptance. Once you accept something is happening, then you will work.
I noticed that as well.
Yeah, you work upon changing
Lynn
it, which
is
is a very beautiful
saying there's
thing.
human rights abuse.
Yes.
To a minimal extent.
The violations.
No, I didn't say there was, but I'm saying they have the right to participate when they feel like. That's why I said they should investigate. I'm not saying they're human rights, but I'm justifying their participation in giving their opinion, yes?
Okay,
let's
that is fine. Over to you, Halimah.
It's okay, Lynn. I mean, no offense. Okay, back to what you people were saying. As I earlier on told you, once something is happening, because one thing we have to acknowledge and agree about is that these things are happening. The violations are there. There is no way the EU would come out of nowhere because they feel like, no, maybe we have a hidden agenda, which may be there, but the fact that they cited human rights violations that have been happening and everyone has actually been seeing them on media is a point I feel like should stand and is very valid. Back to the point of independence, one thing I want us to all acknowledge is that the world is a global village. In this, I mean, we may have the independence, we have the oil. But if we want this project to be a success, we will need the international market. There is no way, independence does not mean that everything is going to be solely be done by us. We can manage our oil. We shall need the market from outside. We are independent, but we need Tanzania. Why? We are landlocked. Now, us getting something from the other people does not remove the fact that we are independent. And in the event that, I want to go back to what Newton was actually saying. The president addressed the issue of EU in an angle of, if you people feel like pulling out, it is okay. We have other people that we can actually reach out.
A new company.
We shall bring in new stakeholders that can actually help us, which I somehow feel was not the right approach to this. Why? By the time what you actually have to look at is, why are these people pulling out? If the EU is making a decision about human rights violation, is the violation existing? Do we have the violations? In the event that the violations are there, what have we done as the government? That is something you people have failed to address. If they are there, which automatically they are there, I mean, obviously, because we are seeing them, have they been addressed? If they have not been addressed, can we first concentrate on this? Because at the end of the day, we have to appreciate the fact that the oil is for the people. So before getting the benefits of the oil, can we first make the people appreciate the oil by not violating their rights? That is something I feel Newton and our government has failed to understand, but has to be worked upon if we really have to have a good operation. Then the justification of the EU intervention is justifiable, because as I earlier on told you, you said we have bodies that cater for human rights and everything. But even when we have these bodies in existence, they've been there, we have the checks and balances that have been going about and everything. They somehow ignored the fact that people's human rights were violated. Not until someone out there felt like a Ugandan here was crying and needed help. And the only way the EU felt they would try to make these people understand the seriousness of the situation is by telling them, if you guys do not, giving them an ultimatum. If you guys do not do this, then this is going to happen. And it is very unfortunate that, again, the president said you can do whatever you want, yet they were supposed to go back to the grassroots of what is actually happening. So at the end of the day, them intervening in an issue as crucial and serious as human rights violation is not a bad thing. That does not take away the independence that we have. Because as I already told you, the world is a global village. At a certain time, we are going to need these people, because Total is a very big asset in this project. Because in matters of supply and marketing, we shall really need these people. So at the end of the day, you embrace the advice and anything that comes from people, if it is being justified. Yeah.
Okay, let me get back to Julius.
Yes.
So to what extent do you think the oil revenue will address socio-economic problems in Uganda?
To what extent? Yes, before I answer that question, I want to get back to you. It is everyone's right to observe, it's a duty, the human rights of others. if the European Union justifies its intervention, saying that it wants to observe the human rights of Ugandans, it's justifiable, but their intentions are not clear. I think we need to go back and find what is the real cause of their intervention. We have had these people of the Western world, okay, let me say the white people, intervening within African issues, justifying their interventions of human rights, environmental protection, issues like that. For example, the scenario in Libya, the current situation in Libya, whereby the president of Libya was killed, or was murdered, was massacred, I don't know. It was not right.
Gaddafi.
Yes, President Gaddafi. The way that issue of Libya was handled, with them justifying their causes of intervention, saying they have to observe the human rights of people of Libya. They are the very people who have caused the current, how can I describe the situation in Libya right now? The current situation in Libya is not the best, I have to say. It's worse than when Gaddafi was in power. They have they justified their intervention, but the solution to the problems of human rights abuse was not justified. It's not right. It was wrong. The way they handled that issue was wrong. And I think this is the same scenario that will happen if we continue having the European Union intervening in Ugandan issues. They should stay aside, they watch and advise. If human rights abuses there are human rights abuses in Uganda, they should be spotted and people should see what is happening in Uganda. Maybe they can act, negotiate with the government. There are penalties that they can do to Uganda because Uganda doesn't stand alone. No man is an island. They can block it. For example, what is happening in Russia and Ukraine. The sanctions that have been put on Russia. Those very sanctions can be put on Uganda without the whites physically, militarily acting upon certain things or intervening, like telling us to stop the ECOP and its operations. It's not right. I don't agree with that. They should watch and advise. How Ugandans are going to benefit. I have been informed. I was informed. I watched someone say that the GDP of Uganda is going to increase by 20% due to the project operations of the ECOP. I am not so sure, but what I know, jobs will be created. Sources of revenue will be coming in. That's why we have a lot of people who want to be shareholders, stakeholders within this ECOP project. And I agree that the economy of Uganda will develop.
Okay. So let me also get Lynn's perspective on that. What are some of the socio-economic problems of Ugandans that you think will be resolved using the oil revenue?
Well, the oil revenue is going to tackle unemployment mostly. It's because at the end of the day, people need to be hired to make sure that the project is successful. So that alone is going to solve the problem of unemployment. Now, like previously, we've had a lot of inflation of fuel prices because of the fact that most of our fuel is exported. But if we are producing a fuel from home, I feel like that will help solve the problem of the fuel prices that always are escalating unnecessarily. So it's no secret that the transportation affects everything. So if we solve the fuel problem, what does it mean? Because currently you can look at maybe an agricultural producer, they may not be able to transport all their perishable goods because of maybe, let me say that, costs if the transport costs are very high, so what will the goods may perish. But if we solve this problem, it's just going to affect other sectors. These people are going to be able to transport their produce in time. And what does that mean? The standards of living are going to improve. And when the standards of living improve, the revenue also improve, the taxes also improve. So yeah, I believe that oil is going to a very large extent, solve the socio-economic problems Uganda is facing currently.
Okay, thank you. We have come to the end of our debate. I'm going to give each panelist less than a minute to give us your concluding remarks, and I'll start with Halimah.
Okay. It is a very beautiful thing to love development, and for a case like Uganda that has been suffering with cases of poverty over the years, when we have a project such as oil coming up and we expect a lot to come from it yearly, to be specific, around $2 billion US approximately, that would be a very beautiful thing. But I want to add a voice to the fact that all these things can be beautiful and can easily be achieved if the human rights of someone out there are being embraced, if they are not being violated. Let's us embrace oil as a blessing, not as a curse, and by so doing, let everyone benefit from it, not others hating the fact that actually it has existed. That is a call to the government to actually endeavor that everyone gets a very good share of the oil in one way or the other, not actually calling it a curse through the human rights violation.
Thank you. Let me move to Newton.
Well, what I can say is I'm glad that I'm a Ugandan, and I'm glad that the extraction of oil is going to happen when I'm still alive. That means I can enjoy some of the benefits of the oil, and to the rest of the Ugandans, they will also be able to benefit from that. What I can say, what I can encourage the Ugandans is to have a spirit of patriotism. Let's love our country. Yes, if there are some minimal human rights abuses, I call upon the government to check on the relevant authorities. If it is being alleged that the police is doing the torture, please let the responsible bodies get into action and make sure they follow them up. But then otherwise, it is going to be beneficial to us come 2025 when we start the oil production.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
My conclusion will be on the time frame for the extraction and the whole process. I would advise the government not to let the time frame pressure them into making very wrong decisions just because by 2025 we actually want to see the reaping of this oil. Let's take our time, do the right thing, follow the right protocol, so that at the end of the day, by the time this oil is actually drilled and we have it, it doesn't, the whole extraction doesn't be for nothing, because you can actually extract it and then we start facing other challenges like the market. Like he was saying about the sanctions, they can put off trade-offs. So let's do this rightfully so that we actually benefit. Let's not let this whole time frame thing position us into, and make us inhuman. That is if actually there are human rights abuses, which I want to remain open-minded. That's if that will be backed up by investigation.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Let me move to Julius.
Yes, I may disagree with the interventions of the European people, but I still want to urge the government to make sure that this oil that is being discovered within Uganda, every Ugandan may benefit. At least 60% of Ugandans can benefit from it, because there was a statement made by an NUP president who said that only the top officials of government plan to benefit from this project. I disagree if that's a mindset or that's what is going to happen in the future. I strongly urge the parliament, government officials, our leaders, to observe how this project is handled. And if there are human rights abuses, they should be addressed.
Okay. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of our talk show for today. I would like to say thank you to Halimah, to Newton, Lynn, and Julius for gracing our invitation. The talk show has come to an end. Thank you so much to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for organizing the Inter-University Debate, which is a platform where university students are able to discuss matters that affect this world and especially the nation as Uganda. From us, I would like to say thank you. Bye. See you again next week, same time.